All right, this is episode. Fuck. I'm not even going to say anything because I was wrong last time.
You were wrong last time.
Okay, I think this is the real episode 17 because I think I was saying last time was 17.
Okay.
This is the real episode 17, everyone.
Watch it not be. Watch this be like 16 or
I
18.
I take no responsibility for anything anymore,
That's fine.
although that implies that I ever did. So this week's questions, you're starting this week. Go.
I'm starting this week. And this one's kind of just a I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Whatever. I was thinking about the old school Final Fantasy games, like 1 through 6, but particularly 4. And I was thinking what if they stuck with that style of, sprite based, grid based, you know, two teams of people just stand in a line with the budget of a modern big Final Fantasy game. What would that little sprite pixel game look like? Would it just be fucking massive, 400 hours long? Would there be 100 characters? Would it still just be the same thing, just written better?
Well,
And as I was thinking of this, I realized that that's almost what the little fucking Switch game that I just totally spaced its name is.
Octopath?
Yeah, which still kinda had sprites and the grid base and
Well, it didn't kind
all.
of have sprites. It did have sprites.
Well, it did have sprites,
And this was one
but
thing I was going to ask you because it doesn't go grid based, and I don't think anything these days will ever go grid based again.
probably not.
So is that a hard and fast rule that you're saying, or
Kinda, yeah.
because I there's nothing out there to even remotely compare that to because nobody does it.
There's not, and then that's why I'm comparing it to Final Fantasy IV.
But in
What if Final
terms of
Fantasy?
sorry,
I was like, what if that was made with a multi-million-dollar budget? Would it just be bigger or more people, or how would that money change it?
well the pinnacle of sprite art is not in Jerpigas.
Yeah.
It's fighting games.
Okay.
Fighting games have some absolutely gorgeous sprite art to them.
Yeah.
And not only that, the amount of sprites there to make the motion look fluid,
Hmm.
there's a lot of work put into it. So I imagine it would be something akin to a sprite based fighting game, just applied to the whole game. Because the reason they can do it with a fighting game is they only have to do it for so many characters. They don't have to do it for every
Everything.
single fucking NPC in 30 different towns
Yeah.
and then enemy sprites and things like that. So I imagine it would, my guess, and this is just
Okay.
a guess, is that it would look something like a fighting game, but with a Jerpoga setting in
Okay.
terms of just having that really detailed, really fluid sprite work.
Okay. I mean, I'm trying to see that on a like over the top grid.
I think it'd be easier if you picture it more like Chrono Trigger, because Chrono Trigger
And,
was still sprite based.
and I thought about that, but that kind
It's
of
not a
loses.
it's not a
It's
grid base, but it's still
it's not.
sprite based.
It's still but sprites isn't just the only thing I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about like super old, like you know, I keep saying Final Fantasy IV with the grid, with the enemies just stand in lines, all those things that even Chrono Trigger outgrew.
Oh well, then you end up with Dragon Quest Seven.
Yeah, is that basically it?
Well, yeah, because the reason Dragon Quest Seven was so fucking long
Okay.
was they essentially made a Super Nintendo game on the PlayStation, and they
Okay.
had a shitload of extra space, because
Okay.
surprise, if you make
Yeah.
a
If
super,
you, if
yeah,
you,
so
yeah.
they filled it with puzzles and shit
Okay.
because they were heavily influenced by the PC adventure game Myst.
Yeah.
So that's what they were inspired by at the time, and that's why that game is so long. Is that rather than going for a Final Fantasy VII esque look,
Hmm.
they went for more of a traditional style. It's not pure Super Nintendo in the sense that over the head sprites. Again, it does have that freeform movement, but
Okay.
the battles are still your completely first person Dragon Quest, not fancy menus or anything.
Okay.
Basic or maybe even non existent, I don't remember, animations, random encounters.
Hmm.
The game was not taxing the PS1 by any fucking stretch of the mind. And the end result was that they just had so much space that they filled it with puzzles.
I was wondering if that was one of the things I thought they might do, just make a game that ends up being fucking 400 hours long because they
They
can.
would. They would. Because it doesn't take as much time as modern design and rendering and shit like that either. So
So I was
if
wondering,
you're
would they
trying
just,
to use the whole budget, just what
yeah,
you're saying, it's like a
yeah,
backward situation from reality.
it is.
Oh God, we can't use all the budget.
Yeah, yeah.
The
So
only
what
way
do
to use
you,
all the budget is to make the game 200 hours long and boring as shit.
so do they make, or do they just make it big with the overworld instead of taking 2 minutes to fly across, suddenly take 2 hours in real time to fly across because it's just so massive.
Alternatively, they do more weird stuff
Dungeons. Okay. Like
because
what?
the it's funny. Dragon Quest V and Final Fantasy VI are very weird games when you think about it for two different reasons.
Okay.
Final Fantasy VI, it didn't have a main character. It had 16 characters.
Okay.
Now, granted, not all of them were of equal importance.
Yeah, because I thought that one green-haired chick was more or less the main character.
It's difficult to say because you do spend the most time with her at first.
Okay.
But, and this is something increasingly I've been thinking about. How do you have an ensemble cast without someone feeling like the main character just by
Hmm.
virtue of the fact that you start as them, which
Yeah,
means that they're your first introduction to the world.
which I think is why Lightning took off in Final Fantasy 13, because it was just as much ensemble except for that. But anyways, back to
Yeah,
six.
getting off topic here. So they might return to that idea of having an ensemble, a large ensemble cast,
I thought it didn't.
and fill it out more.
I was gonna say, didn't Chrono Cross try and do that? Didn't they have like a fuck ton of characters?
They had a fuck ton of characters, but it was by no means an ensemble.
Okay.
It was kind of
It
the
was just
opposite of an ensemble.
it was here's your main character and just a fuck ton of people who can show up if you want them to.
Yeah, if
Oh,
anything, part of the problem is all the side characters, or a ton of them, were really underdeveloped because
okay.
there were so many.
Okay, that makes sense. And you think in my weird scenario they would try and develop them more?
Well, again, and this goes back to
Ideally.
this is just one route that they could take.
Hmm.
They could try the ensemble thing again, just with a larger ensemble and more development behind each
Each
thing.
person.
Because
Okay.
this is something also. I mean, I said Dragon Quest V, but Dragon Quest IV also was weird
Yeah.
in the sense that you played the first. You didn't even get to play as the hero until the end of the game. It was divided into chapters,
Hmm.
and you played all the side characters had their own standalone chapter.
Okay.
Then at the end, they met up with the hero,
Okay.
and my point is just that they could do something like that, which I think we neither of us have played any of the Super Nintendo Saga games, the
Yeah.
romancing sagas. I
Hmm.
think that's kind of what they tried for, but were clearly hindered by budget and other
Okay.
weirdness. So I imagine it'd be something like that, just executed better,
Okay.
would be one possible route. Another possible route is, again, going back to Dragon Quest V.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know this, but Dragon Quest V, you actually play the game in three different stages. I think it's three. I've never played it myself.
Okay.
Of the main character's life.
Really?
So you actually start as a baby, like a young
Hmm.
little kid,
Okay.
and then you're a teenager, and I think you like pick a wife,
Okay.
and then the late game, I think you actually have kids.
Okay. That reminds me of that fucking strategy game. I can't remember the name of it right now.
So
But what's up?
they might do something like that where they try to have more of a general or a generational dynamic world and characters.
Okay.
And
Fuck, I'm trying to.
these are just hypotheses based on previous Square Enix games.
Hmm.
But it's actually surprising when you think about it how experimental things were back in the Super Nintendo days for these big mainline franchises compared to what they are now, where,
Everything is so samey.
well, it's just funny to me that Final Fantasy being experimental is ripping off Kingdom Hearts combat. Like it's experimental, but it's also super fucking safe.
It's yeah.
Like there's no risk to the experimentation.
It's an experiment for Final Fantasy, not as a mechanic itself.
Yeah, and that's where I mean to take a series like Dragon Quest, which is so similar, and to have a game where you don't even play the fucking hero until towards the end. It's pretty radical shit.
It's not as the same. 11 did try to do something similar. Not nearly the same as what you're saying, but it's kind of the same idea.
Yeah, but you get my point
I
ultimately.
do.
Like there's an age of experimentation where even the big series. I mean, if you think about it, Final Fantasy VI was a huge risk.
Hmm.
Not, it was the same game mechanically, but in terms of having an ensemble cast and having so many casts of characters and having a story that flip flopped through so many perspectives.
Yeah, they hadn't done that before, or really, I think aside from 13 ever since.
Yeah, and even then, 13's cast is so much smaller
It is much smaller.
and it's much more structured, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that 13's version is inferior, just that there's still some
It's
structural differences that make it not quite as out there.
okay.
And I don't, I think it's interesting is the thing. I'm not like knocking new games for not experimenting or whatever. Because there is that in a lot of lower budget stuff. Octopath Traveler could be a stellar example of a game that tried something radically different.
Okay. You just yeah, you don't see that with
The mainline
the
big
mainline
games.
big. You don't see that with big budget anymore.
Yeah, and that was all I was saying.
So then back to my question. You think with big budget they would try and do that if they're limited?
Yeah, I imagine they would try
You
to
think they would
do,
try to do more experimental stuff?
yeah, because a lot of game design ends up at the chopping block if you
Hmm.
actually read into the development of any game. There's so many ideas at the start, but then the
Yeah.
practicality of the situation forces cuts as it goes.
Oh yeah.
There isn't a single game that was ever made that was exactly as the person envisioned it.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that this would probably be a chance to bring it much more in line with
To be able
whatever
to
the original vision for it was.
they could do all those crazy things that they thought about but didn't have the budget for or the okay.
Which I also should stress isn't inherently good or bad. There's a lot of really cool ideas in games that get cut, but keep in mind that brevity is the soul of wit,
Mm,
and part of being a creative is working within limitations, and some of the best art arises from working within limitations.
is managing to make something good out of what you have, not what you want.
Yeah, if you have unlimited budget, you end up like Kojima, who sunk millions and millions of dollars into Metal Gear Solid V,
Oh
and
yeah.
then come time to launch it, only had a half complete product. Supposedly a stellar product by all accounts. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
really neat shit in the game. I've
Oh
never
yeah, it
played it. I
sounds
don't
like it.
particularly have much interest in it. It's not my type of thing. But
Yeah.
my point is, when you give somebody unlimited, when you give a creative, especially free reign, they just go crazy because they're
They don't
creatives. They're not
they they don't know how to
focused.
ramp it in and make it work.
Yeah, their job is to be the dreamers.
Mm.
But that also means that a lot of the time they're also not very good at being practical. And that's
Okay.
where I'm saying a budget that big on something that requires doesn't require it at all
Yeah.
has a chance to actually be a colossal disaster
Yeah.
just
Because
because there's not that restriction, there's not that definition.
so they just have every wild idea they have thrown into this mess of a melting pot.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I like it.
So anyway, my question, it's more like an umbrella topic. Like, it's a topic and then I have a few questions within it.
Okay. What's your topic?
So I want to talk about items and
Okay.
replicas.
Okay.
So to start with, the most traditional method is like you can stack 99 potions, and then there's potions, high potions, X potions.
Yeah. The
Again,
Pokemon approach.
I was going to say Final Fantasy,
That one too.
and it's one of the most common things. But there
Yeah.
have been alternative approaches to items
Yeah.
that I think accomplish different things. So
Okay.
the first question that I'm going to throw out in this umbrella topic
Mhm.
is fixed values versus percentages.
Okay.
So in a game like Final Fantasy, you have your potion that heals 100, your high potion that heals 1000, and then your X potion that heals 5000, and then
Yeah.
your elixir that heals everything.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have games like
Tails.
Tales and Star Ocean,
Mhm.
where your restoratives heal. In Tales, it's apple gels heal 30, lemon gels heal 60, or if it's one of the
Orange.
games that doesn't have TP, then you have apple gels heal 30, peach heals 50, and grape heals 70.
Okay. Percent.
So, yeah, this actually changes things quite a
It
bit
does. Yeah.
because rather than having the sort of sense of progression that is, okay, I found
You got to finally move up from potion. Now you're at a
in,
high potion level, and
yeah,
now you're at
into
a
the,
yeah.
but like the trade off, like, and especially in Star Ocean, because in Star Ocean you just have the one, you just have
Okay.
blueberries. But the effectiveness of blueberries improves as the game goes on due to your
Okay.
skills.
Okay.
Anyway, the trade-off though is that where you don't have that increasing sense of progression,
Mhm.
you also don't tend to have 99 potions that are complete and absolute garbage because they heal 100 hit points and you have 3,000.
Yeah.
So, which system do you prefer, or do you really have a preference?
Um.
Or what would be your ideal?
I don't really. It's weird because I'm in theory I like the percentage idea just because nothing becomes pointless or
Obsolete.
just a op yeah. So in theory I like that better, and I think maybe I like that better when we only have three levels of healing, where it's one, two, and three. But in a game that's not rigid to just potion, high potion, X potion, and they have healing amounts at every level in between, I think that's where I can start appreciating fixed numbers. Um, I'm thinking of, as always, it's fucking trails. There's things that heal as little as 100 all the way up to things that heal 10,000 at almost every 500 increment or every 100 increment. There's some new item, whether it's a potion or a food
It's almost
or
always a food.
it's almost always a food.
In fact, that's one of those weirdo games where your regular quotes
Yeah.
unquotes potions are almost useless, but that's a question I actually have later.
Okay. And there, I kind of like the fixed number because it gives me options.
I was going to say diversity of options,
Yeah.
which again,
Whereas,
because sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, I was just say which with the percentage system you don't have much of.
And since we're the Persona Trails podcast, I have to come in and offer the flip side of that, which is one of the things I do enjoy about Persona, especially 5 more than any of them, but all of them
Okay.
are like that, is just
Hmm.
how full of stuff your inventory is by the end of it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many like seasonal items and random
Hmm.
healing items and stuff your party members get you. Like it's not just potion, high potion, whatever. There's
It's
just so much stuff, and it's cool.
so
It's like even if two items do the exact same thing, it's just
it's
maybe one
cool
of
to
them's
see all the things.
yeah, one of them's like a rainy day special bun you got for half the price.
And then one of them's a lemonade that you got in the vending machine, and one of them was a gift that you got on Valentine's Day, and
Yeah, like the
so
variety is great, and I love it.
and you lose that with the percentage,
Absolutely.
which is
Uh,
weird because when I played Graces, Graces had cooking, and it had percentages, and it had this whole fucking range, but it didn't feel like it. I don't know why it didn't feel like it, but it didn't feel like there was that whole range.
I correct
And
me.
I
It's been too long since I played Graces, but correct me if I'm wrong. You could only have one food cooked at a time, right? You couldn't like
in
stockpile it.
you could stockpile it and you could use it outside of battle,
Yeah, but
but
you couldn't
in
use it in
battle,
battle, which is where you're gonna use
yeah,
most of your.
in battle you couldn't use food. You could only get one food from the mixer, but in battle it was just potion, potion, potion,
Right,
which
right,
might,
right,
which
right. The mixer triggered on certain events in battle, and
yeah,
that was actually the primary method of cooking. Right, I remember now.
and yeah, so you
It
still
was
had all the range, but you didn't see it, so it practically wasn't there.
not only that, the way they triggered was very dependent on effects and outcomes in the battle,
Hmm.
which
I mean,
was.
you could still cook everything, and you could still use it outside of battle, but you didn't.
But
There
some
was
of the
no
effects wouldn't trigger if you
some of
use
the
them
effects wouldn't
outside.
trigger like
So
this. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Another thing to bring up, especially with Tails, with regards to percentages, and this isn't a knock against percentages. This is
Mm.
percentages done badly.
Okay.
Is that it creates a reverse difficulty curve, especially in Tails, where Apple Gel is restoring 30% of your health is honestly kind of fucking useless.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not until later in the game when you start getting the peach gels. Like the second you get peach gels, you never want to use an apple gel. And this is
Yeah.
especially true when you get grape gels. Like by the time you got grape gels, you
You
just
don't
never even
use.
want to fucking look at an apple gel.
No, you don't.
And this is especially bizarre because it means that it's like they're trying to replicate that sense of progression.
That's
And that's
exactly
exactly
what
what
they're
they're
doing.
doing. Sorry, I didn't. Anyway,
Yeah.
they, versus something like Star Ocean, where it's all blueberries the whole game.
But the
But the
blueberries just get better.
yeah, but the problem is like I said, the early game in Tales is more difficult than the late game because of your limited healing options. Your limited restorative options actually makes because like think about the one fight in Tales of Vesperia that a lot of people have a hard time with the wolf.
What about the wolf?
Do you not remember this fight?
Vaguely. I remember fighting a wolf.
It's in the forest and there's stun plants.
Yeah, it's like I said, it sounds familiar. I don't remember it offhand, but it sounds familiar.
A lot of people have a hard time with it. And
Okay.
part of the reason they have a hard time with it is, let's say a party member dies.
Yeah.
Well, you throw a life bottle on them. The life bottle restores them with a little bit of health.
Hmm.
Then you have to wait because there's a cooldown timer on your items.
Yeah.
And then once the timer comes down, you can throw out a healing gel, but it only heals 30%.
Yeah.
If somebody is already down or your whole team is taking damage,
That 30% with that timer, it's pointless. It doesn't do anything. Doesn't do enough to help you.
yeah, it's part of what makes that fight very difficult is the limited restorative options.
I wonder if you could make all three items or all three percentages available from the start, but you could give some other incentive to the 30% to make it still be even. Like this one heals 90% and that's it. This one only heals 30%, but it gives you a buff. And I wonder if that buff could help even it out to make that 30% be usable.
I don't know.
It's like because
It's a free form. Like there's a lot of interesting things you could do.
it's like 'cause that's what Trails does, and that's how I find myself using items that don't heal as much. This heals 10,000, this heal only heals 2, but it gives me strength up for 2 turns. So you know what? I can do that and just use it as a buff item that also heals.
Well,
And I wonder if the percentage could do that same system.
it could. It just you wouldn't have.
Yeah.
You'd have to really diversify. You couldn't have the traditional potion, high potion, X potion system,
No,
which is fine.
Mhm.
I'm just saying you would have to. That's what's necessary for it to work, in my opinion.
it would have to be drastically different
Yeah,
than the already established.
yeah, and
Okay.
that's what in Star Ocean 1 and 2, blueberries start the game healing you, I think, 30%. And then there's a
Okay.
skill you can invest points into, and by the end of it, they heal you for 60%.
Okay.
But they're always the same.
But they're always blueberries.
But yeah, they're always blueberries. You're not gonna have that sense of
Progression
yeah, oh
or
boy, now I finally unlocked
discovery.
super medication.
Yeah.
Whatever. So anyway, that was that percentages
Okay.
because I agree with you. I like percentages. I like the advantage of the percentage in the sense that things don't obsolesce.
Yeah.
It does kind of suck when you just have an inventory full of shitty, useless items,
Yeah. I've
or
had
it
to burn.
is
It's like I've had to burn potions just because they were taking up space.
yeah, and it especially sucks when you open a chest that's like you got a high potion. This is the final dungeon. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but as I've said, there are also problems with its implementations.
I understand. Anyways, what's your next?
So again, going back to the difference between the Tales Star Ocean approach and
Okay.
the more traditional RPG approach.
Okay.
In most traditional RPGs, and there are other ways of limiting it too, like on what Dragon Quest does. But the point
Hmm.
is, it's usually not difficult to stack up on like 99 potions
Yeah.
and then carry those around with you.
Hmm.
Versus something like Tails and Star Ocean, where in Tails you can only hold 15 of each gel type,
Yeah.
or in Star Ocean where you can only ever hold a maximum of 20 berries.
Okay.
So, do you feel like there should be more restrictions on the items that you hold? Because, like, Dragon Quest does it in the sense that every individual character has their own inventory,
Yeah.
and you can only hold so many items in their inventory, and every healing item counts as one item.
As a slot, and each character just has 8 slots regardless of what the item is.
Yeah, but on the flip side, I find that systems that traditionally do that, I end up never using healing items in.
Yeah, because you put other things in there instead.
Yeah, so, but on the flip side, there are some games where it's so easy to just get 99 at the healing item that you
Hmm.
just spend the whole game throwing heals on yourself to the point where you might as well just recover all your health at the end of combat anyway.
Because it's so easy just to get. Yeah.
And it just starts to feel like a waste of time.
Let's see. I wish I knew what game it was, because there was something that they had fixed numbers, but the number was dependent on how good the item was. Where the better the item was, you could only hold fewer of them. So, say regular potions, maybe you could hold 25 of. High potions, you could only hold 10. X potions, 5. And elixirs, you could only hold maybe 2 at a time.
That sounds really familiar.
And I like the idea that that system approaches because it allows you to use those better items instead of feeling like you're hoarding those. But you have enough weaker items that you don't feel like you don't have enough of anything at any given time. I mean, I would like a way that, I don't know, makes it maybe where it's not so much. You'd have to really fine tune that number. But I like that idea of having a set amount that changes per item.
And there's a flip side to this as well,
Hmm.
which is that sometimes, again, bringing back Persona, but also Dragon Quest,
Yeah,
Sans 11 apparently. Um, okay, you can carry 99 herbs in Dragon Quest,
yeah,
but the items to restore your mana are incredibly rare,
okay,
which means that there's still that resource limitation.
yeah.
And that's where in like Persona, I never feel like I have. I don't even think I carry around a whole shitload of healing items because
Yeah,
realistically, a there's better things to spend money on.
you're gonna run out of mana before you run out of health, anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that was a good approach to it as well because you still had healing items in that oh shit I'm gonna die situation, but it was never so much that you could just keep going on and on forever.
yeah, and I think. I mean,
It's like I wish there was another way to get that approach across without being so restrictive on mana, which was a huge or SP or whatever the fuck it was. That was such a big part of combat. Like, I don't know what the correct solution is, but I like that idea of you know item scarcity, but still availability.
mhm. And again, this ties into the inverse difficulty interpreters that we talk about, where by the end of the game, usually you have so many
You've got a
top
thousand.
tier healing items. Like,
Yeah, you've got 100 full health restores,
I,
so it doesn't even matter anymore.
I think the only time I ever use Somas in Persona 5
The final boss.
is literally the final boss, and just because there's no reason not to use them at that point.
Pretty damn much, yeah.
It's like, and then by that point in the game, I have 5 of them.
Yeah, and that's another thing I liked about
It's like
that first
you're never
system.
gonna fucking kill me.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about that first system that I brought up is it encourages you to use some of your better items.
That sounds
So
so
no,
fucking familiar. Now this is driving me nuts too.
yeah, so that way when you find one, it's not just gonna sit there unused. You can actually pick it up and put it in your inventory because you use them and clear out that space.
See, I want to say one of the ateliers did something like that.
It might have. There might have been a couple things that did that, but I like that idea. It would need to be, refined for each individual game, but that idea I think is a good approach to item number management.
Yeah, because I mean the weird thing, and my third question is not very well formed,
Okay.
but it's just how important do you think items should be? So, and this is where it's like in the Tails games, you almost never use the gels, honestly, unless the fight is going sideways hard.
Yeah.
At which point, you're not going to use just one gel in a fight.
No.
I don't think there's
It,
ever been a fight where it's like, oops, I'm low, better throw up a grape gel.
no, is
And
I'm
then I
getting
just,
fucked over and over again. I'm going to use gels nonstop.
yeah, it's like, this is going
Or
to be a long fucking fight.
yeah,
Which, it makes me on the overworld. I never want to use grape gels. And then I open a chest and it's like, oh, there's two grape gels, but you can't carry anymore.
yeah.
Thanks. But to use Star Ocean as another example of where I find the importance of items very strange.
Mhm.
There's blueberries and there's blackberries.
Okay.
Both restore 60%.
Okay.
One restores 60% health, one restores 60% mana.
Okay.
How many fucking cures do you think you can get with 60% mana?
A lot. A lot more than 60% health.
Yeah, and yet blackberries are only like 80 gold more. Or full,
Yeah.
or whatever the fuck it is.
Okay.
It's like the
Is it?
value of these two things is insanely skewed. And that's true in
And
most games where,
I'm okay with that though because the blackberry that 60% mana might give you 400% health if converted to cures, but that takes a bunch of turns in combat
well, it
to
doesn't in,
do all those to do all those cures.
it doesn't in Star
So,
Ocean because Star Ocean is real time.
but yeah, but it still takes more time to cast cure 8 times than to throw up one blueberry. So the trade-off that makes them still even out is that one is all that health as you need it in the middle of an emergency, and the other one is all that health when you have a chance to relax outside of battle and just cast cure over and over.
Although
So I'm
usually most games have a cure all,
yeah.
and most games your heals are just as sufficient as your healing items anyway. Which is kind of the thrust of this question is it feels like
Hmm.
there's either two types of healing items.
Yeah,
The ones that are so helpful that you almost never want to use them, like your somas.
and the ones that are weaker than just casting heal anyways.
Yeah, like your somas, and like in Dragon Quest, you have your mana restoratives that are like there's like three in the whole fucking game, like super fucking rare.
Yeah,
And then you have Final Fantasy where you can buy 99 ethers, and then why the fuck doesn't mana restore at the end of battle like anyway?
yeah,
It's I think it's very hard to find this balance.
of good enough to use, but not so good to hoard, and it's like yeah.
And I think part of that is where items that do more than just one thing really come into play,
Hmm.
like the healing items in Trails.
Yeah, where it
Uh,
heals
the,
and
the,
buffs,
they have the
or it
cooking ones.
heals, yeah, heals and buffs, or heals and cures an abnormality, or whatever.
Because I think the flexibility of a system, a good battle system means that items can play a role in it as well. Because
Hmm.
in
Yeah,
Persona 5, for instance, in every single Persona 5 game, you can get items that deal elemental damage. But
yeah.
usually it's just like, who gives a flying shit
I,
about
I
dealing 50 fire damage to one enemy?
yeah, that's pointless, especially later on in the game.
But in Persona 5,
Hmm.
you can have, thanks to baton passing,
Yeah,
items that you use in battle, you throw them out, and then
You can
you
use them to get the knockdown.
yeah, and then you can baton pass.
Yeah.
So it gives you more options and strategies, and the trade-off, the sort of way this is all balanced out, in my opinion,
Mhm.
is twofold. First of all, you can't just buy these elemental items like you used to.
Yeah.
You have to make them, which takes time.
Okay.
And secondly, there's 8 different elements,
Yeah.
which means that even if in Royal you can make like 20 things in one fucking sitting like you can,
You can't just make a ton of all of them and just be done.
yeah, that's still only 3 of each item, and then
Hmm.
2 extras.
Yeah.
Or wait, no, that's 2 of each item, and then 4 extras. Math.
Yeah.
Point is, you
You're
can't
not
just go
gonna have a
crazy.
hundred of all of
Yeah,
them.
and it still took your night to do
Yeah. Hmm.
because it's cut short significantly in class,
Okay.
and that's excellent. I honestly wasn't a huge fan of how lockpicks worked in the first Persona game, or sorry, in
Okay.
the original Persona 5,
Yeah.
because there's no way in shit I was ever going to spend time crafting
Making
a
them.
single lockpick for the first dungeon.
Yeah.
But with the way they redid it in Royal, I was able to open every single locked chest.
Really.
And here's the thing, man, with Persona.
Okay.
Nothing in the locked chest is ever going to be worth giving up a night to open it.
No.
I understand that, you want to have a balance, and I understand the risk. I understand what they were going for.
But it's never that amazing.
Yeah, but it's not. So in that sense, I'd rather just have the lock picks, and
Okay.
because the way it changed in 5 is, first of all, you can make more shit when you sit down,
Okay.
and secondly, they added things you can do where if you go into a dungeon at night, or if you go into a dungeon in the day and you come home at night, even without calling,
Teacher.
yeah,
Kawakami.
Kawakami, I think it is,
Yeah.
there's still shit around the place you can do, and one of
Okay.
them is make tools.
Okay.
So you can still make lockpicks without on nights that in the early other game would be basically wasted nights. But
Okay.
there's other shit you can do, like watch a DVD or read a book.
You can do stuff at home which you couldn't do before,
So there's
or
still
not.
that
Not. Okay.
trade-off. It's not necessarily just a give me. It's damn near close to a give me, but it's not just a give me.
Okay.
And where the fuck was I going with this? I lost track of my original point.
I suspected. Items and their usefulness.
Well, anyway, I think the point I was trying to make was it felt useful in the sense that, and this is just regular market, scarcity made it feel valuable.
Yeah.
But the reality was that, first of all, it wasn't very valuable just objectively because the stuff in the chests wasn't
Good. Good enough.
good enough. That's the emphasis, good enough. But
Hmm.
it was more frustrating because until you got to a point where you could just have Kawakami make lockpicks for you,
Yeah.
you would never open the chests anyway. So you're basically just passing up all the shit that you usually want to find, like weapons.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just another example of items that aren't necessarily healing items,
But still
where,
play a role.
yeah, just striking that balance of items being integral to the game. And I remember my original point now.
You found your way back.
I found my way back. The fact that you had to craft the items, be it the elemental items or the lockpicks,
Hmm.
and that took time, felt like an excellent way of giving them value
Yeah.
that integrated into the core gameplay loop.
Okay.
And I know that's something that just Persona can do because it's time thing, not just Persona, but
Yeah, the time
uh,
thing matters.
yeah, and that's where it's one method that they found to make items feel more significant and valuable.
Okay.
And it's an example of like that there are ways to do it, but they're really going to
Mhm.
involve thinking outside of the box.
Which it's a completely different way of doing it, but I liked how the Atelier games made items feel valuable. The alchemists were the only ones that could use items, so every time you used an item, it was like a thing.
Oh yeah, I
You
mean
know,
the Atelier is literally all about items, so
it is all about items, and I think it did it well, which I
yeah,
would fucking hope so.
yeah. So
But
you fucking hope so because it's the whole point.
but that was
They've only
another
made like
way that
30 games at this point.
but that was just another way that it made making items feel like an actual part of combat, not just an oh I'm getting fucked afterthought.
Yeah, and let me throw this out there,
Hmm.
lest anyone take this away from both our suggestions. Having item crafting does not inherently make it better.
No, no, it doesn't.
No, it does not. Knock this shit off. A lot
Yeah,
of times, all item crafting does is means that instead of just opening a chest and finding a potion,
you
I
find the
have to
ingredients.
pick a mushroom, get a glass bottle, and get some water, and then I combine them into a potion.
Yeah, it's tedium.
Yeah, it's like you see how many extra steps that was for the same fucking result.
Yeah, it's tedium. When
That's
it's
not to
done
say, oh,
right,
yeah,
it's like when it's done right and it's done well and there's meaning to it, it can add more emphasis to it. But when it's just thrown in there to have a crafting system because crafting systems are cool, it's not cool.
crafting systems generally work well in a game. Oh god, in a game, my voice just cracked.
That's
Anyway,
fine.
in a game that's about exploration,
Hmm.
because going out and interacting with the world and remembering where things are, that's part of the exploration. It's filling the world with shit to find.
Okay.
Most JRPGs, as we've gone over, aren't about exploration.
Yeah.
They're about linear progression of narrative,
Yeah.
which means that stopping to craft items,
Is stopping that main narrative.
yeah, almost every time feels like you're just grinding it to a halt.
That's exactly what it felt like when I played Graces last time. I would just stop what I was doing to fucking mash buttons at the fucking turtles every single fucking time.
Yeah, so item crafting is not the instant answer.
No, no, it's not.
Again, the trade off in Persona 5 is that it took time.
You have to consider: do you want to time or do you want to craft?
Yeah, it's like, do you want to raise another stat or do you want to craft some items? It worked there within the context of the time.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it ends up like
Graces.
I was going to actually say Trails, or more specifically, Tokyo Xanadu, where I buy every single fucking like 99 of every ingredient and then just sit there in the final dungeon cooking every single meal for the achievement
Yeah.
because you can just do that.
Yeah, they did not handle cooking very well in those games.
So, anyway, I think we've rambled on about this enough. I'm glad that
Okay.
seems to have sufficed. I'm sure I'll come up with more item related questions down the road, but I think that's good for now since you have one more question.
All right. Mine was gonna be kind of open-ended too, but now we'll see. Um, status ailments or status effects. How many is too many, or is it not a number, but how different the different things they do? What's your general opinion on status ailments? Like, what makes a status ailment system good versus one that's annoying or empty?
First of all, to answer your first question,
Hmm.
I agree with it's the latter thing that you
Yeah.
brought up. It's when there's not enough differentiation between them.
I
When
thought I thought that same thing at first, and then I started thinking about Cold Steel.
when
And it,
poison and venom are the same fucking thing, you can eat a dick.
poison and fire in Cold Steel, what's the difference? There isn't. Fucking sleep and nightmare and fucking the one that turned to petrification and being frozen in ice and being fainted, they all do 90% of the same thing. And yet I have no problem with it in that game.
So I just looked it up.
Mm,
Burn deals more damage than poison.
but they're still both just dots.
Nightmare is sleep, but bestows another random status ailment when they wake up.
Is that enough of a difference to be different?
I mean, I think it's just weird and pointless, but
I I mean, yeah, and petrify just takes your turn and freeze takes your turn and does a little bit of damage. Fucking
apparently Petrify renders you unable to act, like faint, but with a 30% chance to be KO'd when attacked.
oh, I actually didn't know that part. See, I didn't even know that. That's how fucking samey they all feel.
Yeah, and
And
I'd say that's a flaw.
and yet I don't have a problem with status ailments in that game.
I mean, it's not a big enough deal to be problematic. It's just not really
Mhm.
great either.
It's not great,
You're not going to get a whole lot of like bonus points for it.
but you were saying that if they all do notably different things, you can get away with having more of them and still
Yeah,
feeling good.
I mean, the significance is what do they add to the gameplay itself.
Okay.
I think status ailments in Pokemon are the biggest load of fucking horse shit on the face of the fucking universe. Because the problem with
Yeah.
Pokemon is,
Why do a status ailment attack when you could just do a does more damage attack?
well, it's not a fair trade-off. In the moment to moment, it's fair.
Hmm.
Enemy uses poison on you, but you can always use poison on the enemy.
Yeah.
Difference is, enemy dies, you still keep going,
And you take damage every
but you're
three
still
steps.
fucking poisoned.
Yeah.
Versus you die, game over.
Hmm.
It's not an equivalent exchange when a fucking random encounter can confuse you, have you punch yourself down to one health, and then you finally kill the Zubat, but now you're stuck with one health. All because one Zubat just kept using Confuse over and over and over.
So would that system be better if you just returned to perfect status at the end of every fight?
Or the way status ailments. I mean, that would definitely help. That would go a long way in helping.
Okay.
But some of the status effects just shouldn't be in enemy hands in the first place, I don't think.
You don't think it
Like,
should be even?
no, because it's not an inherently even exchange. Stuff like lowering your accuracy.
Okay.
Don't give a fucking random encounter the ability to lower your accuracy because all you're doing is drawing out the fucking fight.
You
Like,
think?
yeah, it's not fun when you get a sand shrew that just uses sand attack 10 times in a row.
Yeah, that's not fun.
And it's especially not fun when you're doing a trainer battle and the trainer uses fucking poison on you in the Elite Four, in the first stage of the Elite Four or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, okay, I can get rid of this poison, but that takes an entire goddamn turn.
Yeah.
Or I can just kill them in one hit, and then I still take damage, which is permanent to me throughout the whole longevity of this Elite Four battle.
Okay.
It's not a fair exchange in my opinion.
So then, should only you have them, or should we just get rid of them? Because
Just
if
tweak the way they work. Like I said, it's not so much that I think that you should have no abilities that get rid of or that reduce your accuracy. Just give it a turn limit or don't give it to fucking random encounters. Or, and this is another sort of problem I have with it in Pokemon. There's no way to block it.
yeah, that is,
In most games, there's some
it's a,
way to
it's a
mitigate the problem.
chance, or okay,
But it's not just that it's a chance. You can get like poison resistance.
okay,
That doesn't exist in the world of Pokemon.
it's just kind of there.
Everybody gets poisoned. Everybody gets their accuracy lowered. Everybody gets their defense lowered.
Okay,
And it's just like, oh, look, you died. Because of course you did. Because I don't get to continue the game if you don't die. But
yeah,
now I'm stuck with this poison. Whereas if I
okay.
poison you and then, uh, how do I
So,
explain this?
so would it be okay then if a random encounter had poison and you had poison, but then at the end of the fight it just went away and you were back to normal?
It would help.
Because then it would still be a fair fight. Battle ends when he dies and everything's back to normal, or battle ends when you die and it's back to normal. He still has access to being able to poison you in that fight, so it's a fair fight, but it's not affecting you after the fact.
Yeah,
Which
it
I
would, it would definitely
which I
help.
which I think is the biggest complaint that I'm hearing is that it persists outside of the scope of the combat.
That,
At,
it's
at least,
twofold.
okay.
First of all, it's that it exists outside the scope of the combat. And second of all, and this gets kind of back to the broader point of status ailments,
Hmm,
which is kind of huge, and we may end up cutting off at some point and going next week with it,
okay.
because which is that status ailments don't typically reflect level. So
Okay.
let's say in Pokemon you get poisoned.
Hmm.
Poison deals health damage. I'm pretty sure based on a percentage,
I think it does too. You're right.
which means that if you play Pokemon like I do,
Hmm.
and this is the way I play the game, and if you want to say, well, you're playing it wrong,
Well, you are playing it wrong, but
what
that's
the
beside
fuck
the point.
ever. And let's say you're level 80, and you
Hmm.
go up against someone who's a level 40,
Okay.
and they just happen to get the first turn. Let's say you go up against a trainer who has four level 40s.
Okay.
In most games, this would be an absolute stop.
Yeah.
Nothing to worry about. But in
Yeah.
Pokemon, if he throws out his first Pokemon and it magically gets the first turn because agility is just
Weird. Yeah.
a total crapshoot in that game, and it poisons you, and then you kill it in one hit, then you take 10% damage. And then he throws out his next Pokemon, and then every single time he throws out a Pokemon, you now get the first hit and kill it in one hit.
You still took 40% damage because you attacked.
50. If he had five, if he had six, 60.
Yeah.
It's like, and then the battle ends, and then you're stuck with it too. And yeah, you can buy antidotes, but it's a pain in the fucking ass, man. So a fight that could have been easily a stomp ends up
So
as.
suddenly taking out a good chunk of your health just because of that.
And if you want to argue that it's a way that the low levels can stand a chance,
I mean,
then my
that's
rebuttal would be then you need to have as the high level something
mhm,
to resist it, some form of counter.
yeah.
Because confuse is the one that's the absolute worst.
Confused is awful.
If you get a fucking enemy that let's say it confuses you,
Okay.
and then sand attacks you 3 times while you're confused and hitting yourself and doing again percentage based damage,
Yeah.
and then you get your turn and you attack and you miss, and then it confuses you, and then sand attacks you 3 times.
Yeah.
No amount of level is going to make a difference to that. No amount of items are going to make a difference to that, because even if you use confuse heal, that's he's going to still sand attack you, which increases your chance to miss, and there's nothing you can do to restore your accuracy. So there have been fights where I have just slowly but surely killed myself
Yeah. Those fights suck.
in fights that you really should win, because the enemy's hitting you for 2 damage, but then you're hitting yourself for 20.
Okay.
It's like that is bullcrap when there's no way to counter it.
Okay.
Versus something like Shin Megami Tensei, where there's usually either equipment, or in the case of Nocturne Magatama, that you can equip that specifically counters ailments. So, one of the things that happened to me, I lost half an hour of game time because I got into a fight, I got back attacked,
Okay.
main character got put to sleep, and then the enemy used an ability that kills anybody who's asleep.
That sucks.
Instant game over, never got a turn.
Yeah, that shit sucks.
But there is a Magatama that nulls sleep.
Okay.
So while I don't think it was the greatest thing in the world, and I was pissed, and that was one of the times when I pulled the game out and was looking at it, thinking about breaking it. Point is, there was something I could have done.
Okay.
It didn't feel like pure RNG. Boy, I hope this attack just misses because I can't do anything.
All right.
And that's another thing it comes down to with Pokemon, is because everything is a one-on-one.
You can't do anything about anything.
Well, there's no party members to throw a fucking confuse heal on you. You have to do it
Okay.
yourself, and then that uses up your turn, and you know what's going to happen?
Yeah.
They're going to fucking use confuse again.
Why do we get stuck on Pokemon so much? I mean, because
Because,
it does it super shitty. I mean, that's why.
yeah,
But
it's
that's
the single worst example of status ailments in a Jerpoga.
yes.
It's just pure fucking cancer. And sometimes when you want to just look at how to do it, you know, the discussion,
Yeah.
you either start from someone that does it really well or someone that does it really wrong. I can't think of a whole lot of games that do it really well,
Yeah.
but fuck my life if Pokemon did not make certain things hell as a kid because of its fucking status ailments.
Yes, it did.
And I should mention that I'm thinking specifically of like Red and Blue when I talk about this,
Hmm.
because I didn't play a whole lot of the later Pokemon games. I stopped it. I played Diamond, and that was the last one I played.
Okay.
Which at this point, I think there are more Pokemon games that I haven't played than have.
Yeah, they a lot of them came out semi recently.
So maybe it's
Maybe it's
better
better,
now.
but it's still one-on-one combat, so you still.
Yeah, I still hate it. But my point is, maybe there's somebody listening to this who's a fucking. Well, nobody's listening to this. Never mind.
There's one guy who listens to this.
Maybe there's some fucking Zoomer out there who accidentally found this and still hasn't clicked off yet for some reason.
Poor guy.
Who's like, what the fuck are they talking about? This isn't how Pokemon works at all. I don't fucking know, dude.
It's how it used to work.
That's how it used to work. So
Okay.
call me a Gen 1er. Talk about all this fucking trauma.
Yeah, Pokemon did not do it well.
Yeah.
But Huh. Sometimes I feel like it can be. In Cold Steel, I have my Reen set up as a guy who just uses nothing but fucking status ailments, and it's fun as hell.
And that is an option, and I don't think it should not be an option. It's just
Mm.
you really have to find a way.
To make them relevant but not overpowered, and make them fair but not fair to the point where enemies are using them against you in a shitty way.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember the game. There was one game where poison was actually good in long fights because it didn't just deal a piddly piss amount of damage.
Okay.
So it was actually worth it to poison certain bosses and then take a more defensive position and let the poison do most of the damage.
That would be kind of cool.
So there's room. I wish I could remember what game did that. I don't. But there's
Yeah.
definitely room for status ailments, which is
To
not the
be good.
same. Yeah, which is not the same as a debuff. I'm aware. I'm
No,
just throwing this out there for the listener.
yeah, it's not, and I was gonna bring that up when we were bitching about Sandshrew, but then I didn't for some reason.
Well, that eh,
But
fucking
there,
hate
there's a
that shit.
there's a place for them, and done right, they can be really good.
The problem is, again,
It's so
most
easy to do wrong.
most of the time they're just going to be a hindrance to you because the fight ends and then you move on with your life. The fight took 1 minute.
Hmm.
Why would you ever bother poisoning an enemy when you can kill them in just like 2 hits?
Which I'm wondering if that's why it doesn't feel as shitty in
Yes.
battles of.
Oh, 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 we had technical issues.
Oh, did we? Damn.
You cut out it as shitty and then just nothing. So what were you talking about?
No, I was just saying that instead of a poison that just does shit damage and it's worthless to use.
What game, dude? We never got the game. Oh god, maybe the game is just cursed. All right, well, I don't think this is necessarily the end of the discussion, but there's clearly some technical issues going on, so we'll wrap this up here for now and come back next week
Alrighty.
and revisit it with hopefully less technical issues. Because
Fucking
it's a good
technical
question
issues.
and it definitely deserves a full, in
Answer.
depth look. So that was episode 17, I'm guessing.
Maybe.
Signing off.